Because our understanding of how the human mind works is so important to our performance as intelligence analysts, I'm going to review some of what was covered during the Level 1 course on critical thinking. It's important to remember that when it comes to problem solving, the human mind is not always our friend. First, we typically begin our analysis by formulating our conclusions. It's the intuitive way. We thus start at what should be the end of the analytic process. Second, we satisfy plus suffice, meaning we go with the first solution that is satisfactory. This can be traced back to our history as hunter-gatherers. If you see a huntable prey or an edible plant, you don't go looking for alternatives. You need to eat now, not later, today or tomorrow. Survival is a daily challenge. So we go with what we've got, not with something better that we could get later. Third, we always find evidence to support our intuition, primarily because we rarely look for contradictory evidence. Why should we? We intuitively know that our intuition is correct. Think about that. Fourth, we focus on the substance of analysis, the conclusions, arguments, reasons, and evidence, never on the analytic process. In all my time as an intelligence analyst, I never recall any supervisor, when reviewing a subordinate's analytic paper, ask, "What analytic method did you use to reach these conclusions?" Never. The questions always related to this paper's substance. What's the evidence for this judgment? Do the people in Office X agree with it? How about NSA and DIA? Do they agree? Have you coordinated this with CIA? Are there any judgments that contradict the national estimate or White House policy? People resist structuring their thinking, according to Thomas Gilovich, because of a flawed rationality caused by certain instinctive, unconscious tendencies of the human mind. These tendencies can have a profound adverse effect on the quality and accuracy of our analysis. 7, I believe, are most influential. There is an emotional dimension to every thought we have and every decision we make. Sometimes, as Daniel Goleman said in his book, Emotional Intelligence, emotion is so strong that it overwhelms our power to reason. Most of what goes on in our subconscious mind involves shortcuts. Our subconscious mind flits all over the brain, making connections, and recovering and reassembling memories and images, and delivers them in a split second to our conscious mind, without our asking or permission. Mental shortcuts are what make people expert in their professions. Give a set of medical symptoms to an intern fresh out of medical school, and give the same symptoms to a doctor with 20 years of experience. It takes the intern 15 minutes to make a diagnosis and prescribe a remedy. It takes the experienced doctor 15 seconds. The doctor's mind makes mental shortcuts based on long experience. The mind of the intern, who lacks this long experience and all its multifaceted memories, can't take these shortcuts, but his mind will in time. The subconscious mind views the world in terms of patterns, which it recognizes based on its stored memories of past experiences. We see a face, a pattern. Our subconscious mind searches its memory, finds a matching face, a matching pattern, and it links other memories with this pattern via mental shortcuts and delivers it all to our conscious mind. We enter a dark room and flick a light switch, but the room remains dark. The light bulb is burned out. It's the flick the switch darkness burned out bulb cause and effect pattern. We've seen it before. So we replace the bulb and flick the switch, but still no light. It's not the bulb, it's the switch. We mistook the pattern. The subconscious sees patterning in situations, in sequences of events, in stereotyping, and in cause and effect relationships. And once our conscious mind accepts a pattern, we are strongly, intuitively disinclined to consider the alternative, that there is no pattern, or we have misidentified it. We see patterns in situations. You're walking down the street and see a little boy on a porch, reaching to ring a doorbell. He stretches up but can't quite reach the buzzer. So, being the kind person we are, we bound onto the porch and, smiling down at the boy, ring the bell for him. The little guy looks up and says, "Thanks. Now let's run." We laugh because we mistook the pattern. Most humor is based on misidentifying patterns. Stereotyping is a form of patterning, perceiving a similarity between two things because of superficial features and then, based on that perceived similarity, ascribing to one of the things attributes of the other. We live, our hunter-gatherer mind lives, by stereotyping. It underlies a great deal of our everyday behavior. It is a principal mechanism of the mind. Stereotyping can be highly destructive of rational thinking and a strong disincentive to consider the alternatives, that the two events we perceive as similar are not similar at all. Cause and effect relationships are a form of patterning. We instinctively suspect a causal relationship between any two events that occur sequentially, and the closer in time the two events occur, the stronger is our intuitive perception of causality. And once having accepted this causality, we are captured by it, because our subconscious mind is so thoroughly optimized as a pattern recognition mechanism. It needs only a small fragment of a pattern to retrieve the whole, accurately or inaccurately, from memory. The subconscious mind, via its mental shortcuts, delivers a complete picture, based on just a fragment of the pattern. It's amazing, really, but it's how the human hunter-gatherer mind works. Patterning, like all our other mental traits, is indispensable to our functioning and surviving as human beings. But it is, like the others, fraught with dangers. When we want to see a particular pattern, expect to see it, or are accustomed to seeing it, our subconscious mind delivers it, whether or not the perceived pattern is real or mistaken. Almost everything we do or think is driven by unconscious biases and assumptions that condition, govern, drive, and compel our behavior. We don't choose to acquire a bias or make an assumption, nor can we create one. Our subconscious mind does it for us. And because it's unconscious, once we have a bias or assumption, we can't remove it. It's beyond our reach. The only one way to change a bias or assumption is to expose our minds, our subconscious minds, to new information and let the mind do the rest. Fortunately, the subconscious mind is, to a very large degree, self-changing. Give it new information and it will change the bias or assumption. A bias or assumption is, however, highly resistant to change and is usually revised only gradually, eroded away by repeated exposure to new information. We give high value to new information that is consistent with our biases and assumptions, thus reinforcing them. We give low value to and even reject new information that is inconsistent with our biases and assumptions, thus preserving them. New information that is ambiguous is either construed as consistent or is dismissed as irrelevant. In this respect, biases and assumptions are, like deadly viruses, unseen killers of objective truth. They impose artificial constraints and boundaries on what we think. The insidious part is that we aren't even aware that our thinking is restricted. We go about our daily problem solving and decision making believing we are exercising freedom of thought, when in fact our thinking is as tightly bound by our biases and assumptions as an Egyptian mummy is by its wrappings. Vivid imagery, isn't it? I hope you will remember it. The mother of all biases is the mindset. Over time, as we acquire more and more knowledge about a subject, we develop a comprehensive overall perspective on it, a mindset. That is as unique to us as our personality. A mindset is a distillation and consolidation of all of our accumulated knowledge, impressions, and beliefs about a subject into a single coherent framework or lens through which we view it. If I say Islamic terrorist, your mind makes an instant, giant mental shortcut to a particular mindset on that subject. Mindsets enable us to put events and information immediately into context, without having to reconstruct from memory everything of relevance that we know about a subject or that has previously occurred. A mindset thus exerts a powerful influence on how we interpret new information. For that reason, mindsets should be regarded both with awe for their immense facilitation of our thinking and with wariness for their extraordinary potential to distort our perception of reality. We humans have an innate compulsion to find explanations for everything. It isn't that we like to have explanations, we must have explanations. We are an explaining species. Explanations, by making sense of an uncertain world, render the circumstances of life more predictable, and thus diminish our ever-present anxieties about what the future may hold, enabling us to cope with a dangerous, highly competitive world and to survive. What is harmful in our explaining trait is that if we can't immediately come up with an explanation for something, our subconscious mind manufactures one, either by filling in missing information or deleting irrelevant information. On and on we go, day in, day out, making up explanations for things. Most of the time, it doesn't matter whether the explanations are accurate, but the fact is, we don't care whether they're valid. Our indifference to the validity of our explanations is stunningly profound, because the explanations we give for things don't have to be true to satisfy our compulsion to explain them. This means that there's an autonomous, subconscious mechanism in our minds that switches to satisfied when we have finished formulating an explanation for something. Imagine how this trait can impact our ability to analyze alternatives and make sound, effective decisions. We humans have a penchant to seek out and put stock in evidence that supports our beliefs and judgments, while eschewing and devaluing evidence that does not. I call this phenomenon focusing. It is a trait deeply embedded in our mental makeup. While all of our mental proclivities have contributed in one way or another to our survival as a species, none has played a greater role than our instinctive ability to focus our thoughts. The trouble with focusing is that it tends to make us view problems one-dimensionally, meaning we tend to satisfice, to focus on, glom onto, the first solution that makes sense, that offers an explanation. The hallmark of focusing is the revered human institution of advocacy, taking a position on an issue, marshaling supporting evidence, and defending that position against the arguments of those holding or focusing on the opposing view. We are a society, a world of advocators. It's the instinctive way we humans deliberate problems and seek solutions. There is no question that advocacy works when someone other than the advocate makes the decision, but when the advocator is also the decision maker, advocacy can be destructive of sound, effective solutions and decisions, because advocacy feeds and perpetuates mindsets, biases, assumptions, and prejudices. It thus nurtures our tendency to focus, and in doing so, utterly defeats objectivity. When we defeat objectivity, we deny ourselves a full understanding of problems and forestall consideration of alternatives. Failure to consider alternatives is the most common cause of flawed analysis and bad decisions. In any screw-up, like the Florida voting system, any failure, like a company's going bankrupt, or any disaster, like the Columbia space shuttle, one can trace the cause back to a failure to consider a particular alternative. A great many of our most cherished beliefs are, upon careful examination, as Thomas Gilvich explains, simply untrue. We usually don't cling to questionable or untrue beliefs because we have not been exposed to the truth. Indeed, we hold fast to them in the very face of contradictory evidence by simply rationalizing away the disparity. As Sir Francis Bacon observed long ago, we prefer to believe what we prefer to be true. We thus are blind to alternative, contrasting beliefs. A battered housewife believes her husband won't beat her again because he loves her. An emaciated anorectic looks in the mirror and believes she's fat. The owner of a miserably failing business looks over his books and believes he's doing all right. No, you're not. You're not fat. You look like you just came out of Dachau. Your husband will beat you again, whether you think he loves you or not. Your business is going bust. You should declare bankruptcy. Clearly, our compulsion to embrace untrue beliefs can have a disastrous impact on our ability to analyze and resolve problems and make sound decisions. In summary, then, we hunter-gatherer humans view the world through a dense veil of burdensome, thought-warping emotions, biases, and assumptions. Through this veil, we frequently perceive cause and effect and other patterns where there are none. And we are prone to grace these non-existent patterns with self-satisfying explanations with whose validity we are instinctively unconcerned. Finally, we convert these explanations into rock-hard beliefs that we defend in the face of contradictory evidence. Is it any wonder that we humans, as Alexander Pope observed 2 centuries ago, are prone to err? If we are to solve problems and make sound decisions, we must learn how to deal with the intuitive compulsions of the hunter-gatherer mind, that, by defeating objective analysis, close the mind to alternatives. Having completed our review of critical thinking, we'll explore how to use a specific structuring technique in the next lesson to help us overcome negative thinking. Then we'll discuss the utility of structuring in the 3rd lesson. In addition to completing the lectures and quizzes in each section of this course, be sure to make full use of the additional resources to maximize the content and value you get from the course.